Hello, my name is Jordan Price, and today I'll be discussing a policy area in which I've selected for my American government and politics class. The policy area I selected was education. Why I selected education? A few reasons. Now, education is such a broad and touchy subject in which I could have found multiple areas that our country could improve its education system. Instead of going into depth into everything, essentially we don't have enough time for that, so instead I chose two things that I believed were important into looking at for improving our education in the future. So the two things I chose were general education, and the second one that I chose was teachers' pay and why I believe they deserve to be paid more. Why I believe teachers deserve to be paid more is because teachers spend most of the day with children anymore. Your child's waking up at 7 a.m. and is going to school until 3 to 4 p.m. Now that's a long day for a teacher to be spending with a lot of children. Teachers are essentially with your child more of the day than you are. So they basically become babysitters in a way. They deserve more money because if they were to be paid more, they would be doing a better job at teaching, and they might focus more at what they're doing rather than just going to work. They might take it more seriously. Most places pay other jobs and whom have nothing to do with helping the country in the way that teachers do, because they're raising the future. Most places pay more. Some examples could be a truck driver. Its average is $45,000 to $60,000. A stripper, $50,000 to $150,000. This is per year. Toll booth worker, $46,000 to $50,000 per year, and a food taster, which is $47,000 to $55,000 per year. And an elementary / middle school teacher's average is $56,420 per year, and a secondary high school teacher earns an average of $58,170 per year. Now, on the other hand, going into the topic of general education and why I believe that needs to be talked about is because higher education isn't what it used to be. And this is said from Nick Pappas in the Daily Collegian. In the past few years, it served as a training ground for children of the elite and was intended by a select few of the nation's young adults. Today, higher education is something that is almost required to live in a middle class or better lifestyle. And relative price of higher education has been consistently rising over the past few decades as a result of higher demand. College and universities have been squandering resources and trying to fit their students into a traditional 4-year framework, which at this point in our lives is very outdated. American academia must understand that the future of the United States depends on the capability of workforce, and that American students and families are going into painful levels of debt to achieve it. Therefore, Nick Pappas, and I agree with Nick Pappas, he proposes removing, or at a minimum reducing, general education and related requirements. So, why is this policy area important at a federal level? The CarnegieFoundation.org states that at a federal level, this policy area is important because it ensures that no student is denied the right to equal educational opportunity based on race, ethnicity, gender, disability, or other protected status. It provides compensatory funding to facilitate access to educational opportunity for high-need students, including but not limited to students living in poverty and students with disabilities. It supports education research and development and gathering and dissemination of information about the scope of quality of the nation's education system to inform policy and practice at the state of local levels. And in a matter of consistent with both its unique advantages and limited capacity, support the development and conditions to promote continuous improvement of the state and local education systems. So that's a lot to swallow, but that's really what that policy area is geared towards. It really does try to cover a lot of areas in which, that's why when I was talking earlier, there's a lot of ways I could have gone with this paper because of how broad education is. So the overall message of that, stated by CarnegieFoundation.org, says that the federal government has the responsibility to ensure the rights to a free and high-quality education for all K through 12 students by protecting their civil rights and providing resources for most in need using public data and high-quality research, and by providing support and infrastructure for schools, districts, and states to help them continuously improve their work. So how can Congress increase state taxes? By increasing the real cost of state taxes people already pay. That's how. From the enactment of the federal income tax in 1913 until last year, most higher income state taxpayers could deduct their state income and property taxes on their federal returns. In recent years, an affluent taxpayer would receive about $1 back in form of the federal income tax reduction for every $3 of state income or property tax paid. So a $3,000 state tax income of a property tax bill felt like a $2,000 expense. The Trump Republican tax plan changed all of that. So how has this issue been handled by Congress? The information I will cover, all of the sources are cited from PBS.org NewsHour Nation and PBS.org NewsHour Politics. Another website used for this information was otherwords.org. Congress made it harder to give teacher raises. Congress has the ability to write statute and distribute funds. If, for example, it releases funds as formula grants, which are distributed to all states on the same bias, it can ensure universal adoption of programs like Title I. Competitive grants like Race to the Top arguably make policy implementation more effective. The executive branch can regulate, clarify, and be selective about its enforcement of the law, and judicial rulings can redefine what quality as implementation of policy, as the Supreme Court did in the 2017 Andrew F. versus Douglas County School District. The ruling was a unanimous decision that interpreted an idea as requiring that a disabled student's educational program must be appropriately ambitious in light of his circumstances. So roughly, that's about what Congress is able to do when it comes to helping education when it's split up into the executive and judicial branch. So in a few months, we've seen teachers in 5 states walk out of the classroom to protest their abysmal pay. State budgets are most to blame for low teacher pay and poor school conditions. But there's a federal tax connection too. Unfortunately, last year's Republican tax plan could make keeping good teaching in the classrooms more difficult than ever. So when it comes to what Congress believed about general education, I did not find much information. So we're just going to move on, and we're going to talk about what legislators have been active in supporting the legislation for teachers and that whole, just education as a whole. So there is a Senate Education Committee that meets every Wednesday. Their jurisdiction include bills over education, higher education, and certified educational personnel. people who are involved in the Senate Standing Committee on Education are Senator Connie M. Leyva, she's a Democrat, Senator Scott Wilk, he's a Republican, Senator Ling Chang is a Republican, Senator Maria Elena Durazo is a Democrat, Senator Stephen M. Glazer is a Democrat, Senator Mike McGuire is a Democrat, and Senator Richard Pan is a Democrat. Now, as you can see, there are more Democrats than there are Republicans on this team here. So the Democrats are, I believe, a little bit more into making a change for education and pushing a change. And why I believe that is because money.com has provided us with this statistics. With the annual salary of teachers in their states, 59% of Democrat respondents told pollsters that they should pay teachers more, while 38% of Republicans said the same. So there is a difference. Democrats are 59% of wanting teachers' pay to go up, and 38% are only Republicans. So it seems to me that Republicans are more opposing in this legislation. But allmoney.com also provided us with, despite the political differences, both Democrats and Republicans appear to be warming to the idea of raises. The increase in support for teachers' pay that we saw this year was noteworthy, both because of its size. A 13 percentage point jump is quite substantial in terms of a change in public opinion in a single year, as well as its breadth. That was quoted from a man named West from Money. So in all, I believe that the legislation could go either way. I do, though, believe in a sense that Democrats are pushing for education to be focused on more, only because of what Cairo.com said. It says, responding to teacher walkouts across the country, congressional Democrats have proposed raising teachers' salaries by canceling the tax cut for the nation's top 1% of earners. Now, a better deal kind of goes along with that saying right there. It says, unfortunately, Republicans have been pushing federal and state education cuts to fund tax giveaways for the rich, resulting in fewer resources for schools and students and low teacher pay. So I have to kind of believe that, just from the research that I've done, that Democrats are really pushing for education more. So has there been previous legislation on this issue? From NEA.org, teachers have tried getting raises for years. Because of low pay, new teachers often cannot pay off their student loans or buy homes in communities where they teach. Teachers and other certified educators often work 2 to 3 jobs to make ends meet. If school districts want their students to have more professional teachers, they must pay a professional salary. More information from NEA.org states that economic positions for teaching has worsened over time. Inflation has eroded most of teachers' salary increases. Over the past decade, the average classroom teacher salary has increased 15.2%, but after adjusting for inflation, the average salary has actually decreased by $1,823, or 3%. College should be a time spent focusing on learning about what you're going to do for the rest of your life, not frantically trying to learn bits and pieces of every possible subject on campus. Very true. All right, so to cover the last few, are there interest groups involved in this issue, and which groups are involved and why? Well, I found a few that were involved. We have the American Federation of Teachers, which is a federation of teachers that focuses on the fundamentals of overall education. This has all been found from votesmart.org. The Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development. This is a whole nother group that supports education as a whole. Their group interest is a global community of educators dedicated to excellence in learning, teaching, and leading. And we have the National Education Association, which deals with higher education. They could touch base on things such as general education. For one, their mission was to advocate for education professionals and to unite our members and the nation to fulfill the promise of public education and prepare every student to success in a diverse and independent world. So how does the public feel about this issue? Well, APNnews.com says Americans overwhelmingly believe teachers don't make enough money, and half say they'd support paying higher taxes to give educators a raise. Research demonstrates that having an outstanding teacher is valuable for all students, but particularly for those living in poverty. In fact, having an excellent teacher as opposed to a weak teacher can make a full year's difference in students' learning. School districts spend more money on teachers' salaries and benefits than any other expenditure, yet they frequently don't spend these funds in a way that most would improve the performance, quality, or distribution of teacher workforce. The Center for American Progress supports differential compensation for teachers, that is, paying teachers differently based on their teaching assignments, skills, and ability to improve student achievement. Differential compensation has the potential to improve teacher quality, address teacher shortages in specific subject areas in schools, and ensure a more equitable distribution for effective teachers. That is an opinion that somebody came up with, in which could be a way to pay for teachers to be more effective. That's just one way. There are actually many that this website came up with. But we're not going to focus on all that just because of our limited time. Now we're going to talk a little bit about general education again. I know we've been skipping around on that, but there isn't really much covered on it just because it's a newer topic to try to discontinue. But teachers' salary has been all over the United States with tons of people complaining about that. So that's why there's more information. But our public's views on general education, well, one girl in particular, Alyssa Practice, wrote a website on it. It's the northernstar.info. And it says, students should not be forced to take classes that cover materials they have already been familiar with at some point in high school, which I agree personally because of my experience taking general education the past 2 years. I just came out of high school with those classes, so that is very relatable in my way as well. She says, as a journalism major, I never am going to need to know the Pythagorean theorem or quadratic formula in order to write or edit a column effectively, which is very true. I'm also going for broadcasting, so why I would need to know a lot of mathematics or biology, I don't. But so what do I see happening with all of this legislation that was just talked about? Well, for general education, I could say some benefits that could come out of getting rid of it are, Nick Pappas says, from the Daily Collegian, it will, first off, speed up graduation for the average student. It will speed up that whole process. Those 2 years spent doing your general education, you could put towards your chosen field. Also, less time in school means less debt or more money for your parents' retirement and your siblings' education. Many universities, the price is exceeding $50,000 per year, which is crazy. Imagine what it would be like if there weren't any junior colleges and you didn't have those opportunities to just go for your general education and only go for a couple thousand. It hurts the overall economy when loanable funds are being absorbed for inefficient use. the available money for loans every year is very limited. And if we reduce the number of student loans, we can see an increase in other types of loans. It will help the economy grow and produce new jobs as well because of that. It does harm the economy growth when many workers are spending too much time in college. They could instead start their careers earlier than they otherwise would and thus pay more taxes and save more money over the course of their career before retirement. All of this would help the federal and state government's budgets by reducing spending on student aid. Now to touch base on teachers' pay. Some Democrats have been looking into something called a better deal for teachers and students. This is something that I believe in the future could be beneficial when looking to change the legislation or what further legislation could be made over the salary of teachers. A better deal for teachers and students would dedicate $50 billion to states and school districts to increase teacher compensation and recruit and retain a strong, diverse workforce over the next 10 years. This is from abetterdeal.com. So this plan would give additional support to initiatives that increase capacity in Title I schools and ensure all students have access to academic opportunities like computer science, music, and civics. How will this payment be paid for? How will the Democrats invest in this pay? Paying for this is simple, the website says. Revisit the Trump tax cuts for the top 1%. Instead of allowing millionaires, billionaires, and massive corporations to keep their tax breaks and special interest loopholes, Democrats would invest in teachers and students.